Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy Monday and welcome back to another Demystifying Post-Production. My name's Ellie and I am very pleased to be here with two master trainers, Lionel and Dustin. How's it going, guys? How are we doing today?
It's going great.
I'm fine.
Good, good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for being on this series with us. I'm super excited. And so hey to everyone in the chat as well, to Jay and to Hannah. Don't forget, you can drop your little questions in that question chat and just either say hi to us, let us know where you're from, or ask us any questions over this next hour. So with a new month, as you guys may know, comes a brand new series or a brand new topic in our demystifying post-production shows. And so me and the guys were talking and we thought it would be great to do a Redshift, a whole Redshift month. And we're going to be diving into some really fun and interesting topics that we haven't necessarily covered recently in the past as a team. But before we get into that, let's just go over some of our normal housekeeping stuff. So if you guys want to know what's coming up or what's happening over the next few weeks as a team, all you have to do is head over to the maxon.net events page, and hopefully you guys can see that here. And basically it just has all of the sessions that we're doing over the next few weeks or few months. And so as you can see, we have a weekly VFX talk show with Stefan Hashi, and that's every Friday. And then Mondays are now going to be Raise Your Redshift Game, and that's what me and the guys are going to be doing. And we've got part 1 going on today. And on Wednesdays, we're starting a brand new hands-on with Maxon workshop. And this is going to be an intro to rigging inside of Cinema 4D. And so we've got our expert instructor, Joe Herman, has broken down all of the the topics and the different features inside of learning rigging, and over the next 6 weeks he's going to be diving into that. I'm going to be there as well, but I'm just going to be hosting and asking and answering questions. He's going to be doing all the amazing content. And we also run an Ask the Trainer. So every 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month, we run an Ask the Trainer where you can basically hang out with us live on YouTube, me and some of the training team. And at the moment, we've been going through some of the certification topics. So if you're interested in becoming certified, I would recommend checking out those sessions. And in case you guys didn't know, we record pretty much all the sessions that we do, whether it's Ask the Trainer, Maxon Color, all that amazing stuff. And that can be found on our Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So all you have to do, head over to YouTube and you'll find us on there, as well as our upcoming live streams and all of the different playlists with all of the sessions that are also more often than not time-stamped. So you can flick through, find some cool stuff, and yeah, definitely check those out. Finally, we do love to give away t-shirts. We love to give away some Maxon merch because, why not? And so if you need the link for that, I believe it should be in the handout section, but in case you can't see that, let us know in the questions and we will link you to this secret link. And we actually have a special code to get into that as well, which is Redshift Raising. But again, if you can't see that or you can't find that, let us know and then, we can link you to that. That's not a problem at all. And finally, we do actually have a shared project resources for all of these demystifying sessions. And so as you can see on here, on this link, we have a Raise Your Redshift Game, as well as all the other topics that we've been doing over this last year as well. And so what we'll do, hopefully Lionel and Dustin, we can get some project files together at the end of each of these sessions and maybe throw them on there for everyone to break down. That'd be cool?
Yeah.
Cool. Right, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, Lionel. But yeah, as we said, it's a whole new topic where we're going to be looking at some really cool stuff inside of Redshift. So shall I hand it over to you? And do you want to let us know what are we going to be diving into today?
Well, today, we're going to see Redshift and xparticles and also particles inside Cinema 4D. And we'll be doing some cool stuff, yes. So let's go.
Cool. So my screen has decided to freeze. It loves doing this at the moment. Are you able to take it off me? Oh, actually, it just kicked in. It loves doing this.
The mouse moving.
It loves doing this to me sometimes. Right, so let me try that one more time. There we go.
Share my screen. Should be working now.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there it is.
Also, really quickly, a few people in the chat are saying that your audio is a little bit low, Lionel. Could it be turned up just slightly?
Yes, I will do that.
Perfect.
Is this better? Maybe
Yep,
too much.
great for me. Yeah, everyone's saying that's great. That's perfect. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So yes, welcome. So today we're going to do this. So this is xParticles with Cinema 4D, but we'll see also how to do some. Well, this is done only with Cinema 4D, basic Cinema 4D with thinking particles actually. And we'll see how to render trails with Redshift. That's the topic with particles, of course. And we can do some amazing stuff using trails. I really love to do that, to render spline. So trails or spline, same thing, you'll see. And it's very quick to render, very nice. You can visualize motion with this, create some very interesting setup. Here with this face, we can, I think, recognize the face, and this one, which is more straightforward. Okay, so I'll start with the one xParticles because it's easier and we have more freedom with it. And then we'll see how to do it with Cinema 4D. Actually, with Cinema 4D, it works very well, but it's just a tiny more complex. We'll see that later. So I'm going to turn off my camera. All right, so let's start. So this one is the final project. So you can see this is Splines with a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to recreate all that inside Cinema 4D. So I'll just take here my head, my model head. So body here, I'm going to copy and start a new project and paste. You know that's one very powerful feature from Cinema 4D, to be able to copy paste almost anything you like into project, materials, keyframes, object, whatever you want. That's so easy to use. All right, so the model head comes from the library. Actually, it's the head from the human rig. If I type human here, we'll see. So it's actually this one, I think. No, the other one. So let's go back. Human. Yeah, this one. And this is the 30 people. I'm not going to. Well, it's one of them. It's the one you can, yeah, this one. Okay, this is this one. So I just took the face, cut off his head, poor guy, and I did a bit of cleaning. Especially, I just deleted what's inside the face because he had a mouth here, a mouth cavity. So I deleted it. Also, I took off the eyes, so we have a very nice clean mesh, so we can work with it. All right, so one important thing to note, since we're going to play with particles, and that's also the case with Cinema 4D particles, you need to take care of the scale of the model. You can see it's quite big here. If I click here, we can see the size. And well, it's a huge, gigantic head. It's going to work better with it. Actually, you can do it with any size, but all the units are going to be easier to play with if you have something around 100, 200 centimeter. Okay, so it's a good habit to scale them to the right size. Okay, so now I'm going to use it to emit particles. So let's go. Also, I'm going here. It just moved from there. It's in the camera. Okay, yeah, save frame. I'm just going to disable the save frame so we don't have those save frames. And let's go to INSYDIUM, xParticles, XP system. Okay, so we have this whole setup. So I won't explain everything in xParticles because that would take weeks, really. Just just let's say that we have a system here with the emitter, and this emitter is going to emit particles. So if I hit play, we will see our particles here. So obviously that's not what I want. I'm going to take my emitter, and in object, let's take the emitter shape to object, use the body as an object here, and I want to emit polygon from the polygon area. Okay, so now if I hit play, F8, it's going to emit particles from there. So I don't want them to move. I'm going to the emitter here, emission, and we're going to put the speed to 0. So now we can see we have tiny points here, which are the particles stacking up on the character. So now I want them to move to follow the surface of the face. So for this, we have modifier. That's what's really great with xparticles. We have a lot of modifiers doing all sort of stuff. And here in the motion modifier, I'm going to use the follow surface. Easy enough, it's going to follow the surface, which is going to be the body. So now particles are emitted on the body, and they're going to follow along the body. So if I hit play, we don't see anything because I have put a speed of 0. So if I put back my speed here, we will see our particles, you see, swarming around on the character. Okay, just a few stuff here. You can see here we have a distance, which is the distance from the surface. Actually, no, that's not the distance, sorry for that. That's the offset. So if you want to have your particles closer to the geometry, you're going to decrease a bit the offset like that. Yeah, and now it's following more closely the face. Okay, so the whole idea behind this webinar is to play with trails. Actually, I like to play with trails because it's going to visualize motion. Here, for example, it's not very interesting. It looks like he has ants on his face or something like that. We don't see, it's not very interesting. As soon as we use in the generator, we're going to use the xpTrail. We're going to associate here the emitter, the main emitter here. So I'm going to drag and drop. Now we can see something more interesting. Let's hide the model. And we have this kind of, well, this web of threads are on his face. So that's already interesting because you can, it's interesting, but we can do so much more with it. So I'm going to use another modifier to control the motion of the trails, of the particles creating the trails. So in the modifier, in the motion, I'm going to add the turbulence. And the noise type, I'm going to use the curl. So the curl noise is very special because it's going to take control of the whole particles. You just have to be careful with it because the turbulence is going to add turbulence to the motion of the particles. The curl is going to create a whole new motion and a very interesting motion. You see, as soon as I do that, if I hit play, we get this. And already that's pretty cool. Even more interesting, if I take the frequency, so this is animated noise by default. If I put the frequency to 0, now we'll have some kind of pattern we can very easily read. Okay, we have this very interesting swirl obtained very easily thanks to all that. I'm going to get back my body and NA to hide the wireframe. I'm going to change the display color here in black, so it's going just to be nicer to see. So this could be done because we already have something very nice. If I change here my turbulence, changing the strength is going to accelerate the motion of the particles. So if I put to 18 is going to go much faster. You can see how the particles are stacking up on each other. Let's go back to 5. And if I change the scale, making a smaller scale, we have smaller curve. And that's already really cool. Okay, so about the redshift. Well, we want to render that. The problem with splines is by default, because those are splines, splines cannot be rendered unless you use the redshift object tag here. So let's right click, redshift tag object. Then you have this this tab here, curve, which is going to appear because this is a spline. Cinema 4D recognize this is a spline object. So let's go to the mode and we start with the hair strands. And that's enough already to have some rendering. So if I go to start IPR, we have this. Okay, and we can see now very easily how it looks. And you can see this is real time. This is very easy to render because those are hair strands. Hair strands are actually sprite, so they are two-dimensional, but they are always oriented to the camera. So it doesn't have geometry to draw. If I go back, go closer to it, you can see here, if I turn around, it moves around with me. It's like a ribbon always facing you. So because there is no thickness, this is why it's so easy and so fast to render. Okay, so we could stop here, but we are going to see how with Redshift we can make it look much better. So by default, as you can see, the particles, the trails are green. This is because we don't have any material. So we're going to do that. I'm going to add a new material. And let's add here Redshift material. So this is going to be a standard material. This one is the head material I pulled from the other file. I guess I'll keep it. Let's just call it head. And now this one will be the trails. So if I put my object on trails, we will see that it takes the color of the trails. So now to get back some color, I'm going to open it, my material. Let's go to the shader graph, and we have the usual material. So I'm going to slide that here. And from there, we're going to use a very one particular modifier here. So Shift C to have all the nodes. I'm going to use the Vertex attribute. Okay, so it's a bit hidden. I mean, you don't think about Vertex attribute to render some splines. It doesn't make sense, but you will see how it makes sense. Anyway, this is the one you need to use, not the particle one or whatever, Vertex attribute. So I'm going to drag and drop. We have some color here, so I'm going to plug it to the surface right away. And you can see this is the color we get. So now it's going to get interesting. In the attribute name, you have a menu, drop off, curve, and we have all these choices, and they are all interesting. We're going to start with this one, the curve ID color. Only with this one alone, you're going to get some crazy color. Okay, so those are random color from the whole spectrum. Each spline is going to be rendered as an individual color. So it's already pretty fun just like that. If you want to make it more interesting, we can remap this using a ramp node. So I'm going to Shift C, use a ramp. Let's put it here. And now if I connect this one here, and then to the output, we can see we have some kind of black and white gradient, which is this one. So now it's pretty easy to change this gradient to something else. So I'm going to take the color and we're going to take some blue, for example, and you can see it works. And the white here could be, we could leave it white, for example, or let's put it red, and we can see we have all the gradient to purple. So it works. That's a very nice way to control the looks of your particles without adding anything. It's pretty nice. The only problem being that you don't have many control with it. It's all random. So, okay, I can control the color in the random ramp, but I cannot really tell that this particle here, this part of the face should be red, this one should be blue. I cannot do some interesting stuff like if the particles live long enough, it's going to be yellow, for example, then when it dies, it's going to be red. It's pretty limited. Still, it's interesting, it works. This is a very, very easy setup. When you know how to do it, it takes like 5 minutes, top, very, very quick. Before going to the shading to get more interesting result, we will see how to control more easily those particles, those color and so on, because this is, like I said, the basic stuff. You can actually tell that each strand to be the color you want and so on. Okay, maybe there is some question already, I don't know.
Not at the moment.
Not yet.
No, just a few questions about the project files and things like that. And I was just letting people know that they'll be made available at the end of each session.
Yes, of course. There will be one with xparticles for those who have xparticles, and another one with Cinema 4D native particles. Then I will show later. Okay, so here with xparticles, we can control more easily the look of the trails. Let's close all this and let's go back here. So here, if you go to the xpTrail, you can see we have a thickness and color tab. And here we have already some settings we can control. So thickness mode, do not set thickness, meaning that the thickness is controlled here by the thickness of the Redshift tag. So it's pretty easy. If I go back here, 0.1 is going to make some very tiny, and that's already interesting effect, as you can see. Or you can make it much bigger like this. Okay, but that's for all of them at the same time. So if you want to be more precise than that, you have already one interesting option here, the scale. If I take my scale here, and this one, hitting Control, I'm going to add a spline, a point, and this one here, it means that when the trail is going to start, it's going to be very tiny. Actually, it's invisible. Then you're going to grow, go to this a maximum, which is 1, and then go back to there. And here, if we take a look, that's very interesting because you're going to add variation to your setup, and it's still very easy to control. It must be noted, though, that this is during the time, the lifespan of the particles. And for now, we have infinite particles. So if I hit play, we're not going to see here because it will be too slow. The scale is going to change. It doesn't work well with animation. But for a still like that, it's great. It's so easy. I mean, you just put that. If you want to create more variation, you're going to add some points and so on. So it's very nice. If we want to go further than that, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go back here. So we have the same length everywhere. And we're going to use instead some control on the xpTrail. Okay, so here the thickness, we can use the thickness from the radius current. Okay, so current radius, which is the one of the particles. So if I go to my emitter, and you can see here in the display emission, sorry, we have the basic particle data. We have a radius of 3 centimeters. So in xparticles, you don't see the scale of the particles by default because they are dots. That's for split purpose. If I change here my radius, so let's go from 3 centimeters to, I'm going to add some variations. So let's add a variation of 3 centimeters, meaning that the particles are going to be 0 and 6 centimeters. It's going to drive the scale of the spline. So there's a caveat though, you need to relaunch the simulation. If I'm going to render this, I won't see the change here because the trails are being created by the particles. So I need to relaunch the particles to create the trails. So let's go there, that should be enough. Okay, and now if I hit start, we will see that the size of the particles, it's much too big, but we have some tiny trails and some big ones. So here now I can take the overall thickness. Let's go back to 0.1, and we can see the variation of scale between the different trails. If I go back here, you can see some are very thin, some are bigger. Maybe let's go to 0.2, and now you can see it. This one is very, very thin. So maybe I'm going back here and let's take my emitter and let's put, well, 2 centimeters with a variation of 1.5. Let's start again. Okay. And now if I go back here, yeah, now it's more interesting because you can see the small ones, the bigger one. So it works. So that's for the thickness. If I want to control the color also, we can do it, but again, there is a caveat. So in the xpTrails, we need to change the trail color mode, which is set to particle color that doesn't work with Redshift. Okay, you need to change here per vertex. Okay, that's important. Then in the XP emitter, in the display, you have here the color mode, which is now single color. I'm going to change first the color of the particle. So let's switch from single color to gradient random. And it's going by default to create particles with those colors. So from blue to white, I'm going to leave it as it is. Let's deactivate the trail. And also, well, no, I think it's fine like that. If I go back here and relaunch, we can see we have different color for the particles. Let's go back with the trails. I need to relaunch again. So in the viewport, you won't see anything. Also, I'm going to change the follow surface here and change the offset to 0 again. It's why we had some particles escaping. Okay, so now we have this. And the xpTrails now is per vertex. If I launch Redshift, it's not going to work because it's still using my shader here, which works only with hair strands. So if I want to get the color of the particles, I'm going to change here my vertex attribute, and you need to change this attribute name here, curve, to the curve color polygon curve only. Okay. I'm going to bypass this ramp because now I want to use the color of the particles only. Still doesn't work because we need to do one last step here. Change your mode from hair strands to actual geometry. So the difference between the hair strands and all the others are real geometry, like a box, cylinder, and so on. So I'm going to use capsules. It's going to be a bit heavier to render, but still pretty fast. So let's change to capsule. It's preparing everything, and here it is. So now what's great with this is that all the color is controlled by the particles, meaning we can use all the xpTrail tools to change this color. If I stop here, we could use, for example, in the modifier. So first, we could use here all these different modes to color particles, but we don't have much control with this. So in the modifier, we have another one, which is the xpColor. And the xpColor is going to control the color of the particles. So here, if I change my color operation, let's set to set by Falloff. Set by Falloff is going to change the color to this one. So let's use, for example, some red. And if I go back here and relaunch the simulation, I'm going to start. You can see here, if I zoom, at the very beginning, they are still blue, and then they fade to red because of this modifier. So that's one of the modes we can use. One which is even more interesting is because I've used the set by Falloff, is use one field, and in the field we can use, for example, the spherical field. Let's increase it, not too much, something like that. And now this spherical field is going to control the coloring of our particles. Then it's going to control the color of the ramp, of the trails. So let's go there. Every time you have to relaunch the simulation. You can see we're getting some interesting shading using this spherical field. So I could put some more spherical field on the top of the head, for example, and create some colors, because you can stack those XP colors on top of them and control the coloring of the particles, which is going to control the coloring of your trails. This is very, very powerful. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with that once you have understood how it works, because it can you can do whatever you want. The xpColor, again, I'm not going to explain everything, but it has a tons of options, like everything in xParticles. As you can see, you can create some random color. You can take the color from texture. So if I use some texture on my head, I could drive the color of the particle with that. Distance from object, from camera, time dependent. It's very, very powerful. This is just a simple way I showed you. I mean, it's huge what you can do with it. So you control the scale of your trails by using here in the emission the radius and the variation. You control the color here using the xpColor, and all this is inherited by Redshift because we're using this mode per vertex, and we can create this stuff.
Lionel,
Yes.
a really cool question has actually come in. I was wondering if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, is it possible to move the particles randomly but along the polygon edges so it looks more geometric?
Yes, there is. Like that, right now I don't know, but there is a way already in the XP emitter, in emission, in the object here, you can tell it to emit particle from the edges, and then to follow the edges. Actually, I would create some splines from the head mesh, and then use again the follow surface. It's going to actually not the follow surface, the follow spline, which is another modifier. That should be tried. You see follow spline. So with the splines I would get from the head mesh, you would follow the splines and recreate the cage, the wireframe of the object. I'm
Cool.
sure that there are some more solutions. That's what really cool with the xParticles. You have always a ton of solution. I think the one I've just said is going to work, but there must be some other even more interesting.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a way of combining it with is it the network?
Yeah, the network, actually the network is going to, it doesn't go well with the surface because
No.
the network is going to create some straight angle, for example. I mean, some corner angle, 90 degrees angle. And because our geometry is curved, it doesn't work very well. You can create it inside a volume though. Inside the volume, it's very interesting. You're going to fill the head with the network, making those 90 degrees angle. That work.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going now to shade this because this is a Redshift session after all, and to get a more interesting look, see how we can well to make something that looks cool. Just before, I'm going to make a few changes. Actually, I don't want to use the xpColor. I'll use the blue color we had. That's very nice, like this. And I'm going to make a few change. The XP emitter. Actually, I would like to use on the emission. Yeah, because explain the problem. If I add some more frames, because my turbulence is not animated, there is no frequency. We have those cool shape, those cool swirl, but they're going to, well, to run endlessly onto their own. At some point, you can see there is no change happening anymore. That's because we have too many particles at the same time. What could be interesting is to have a more random setup. So what I'm going to do here in the emitter, in the emission, we have the rate mode. I'm going to change the lifespan from full lifespan to a lifespan of, well, let's start 75 for now. So meaning that my particles are going to last no more than 50, let's make 50 frames. Also, to show you what's going to happen, I'm going to lower the birth rate and we'll see we have a problem. You see, my particles are going to disappear. So that's interesting because they are disappearing, we have more variation, it's more lively, but we cannot let those trails that disappear. And they disappear because the particles are going to die all of a sudden. And the trails don't know what to do, so they just disappear as well. So what could be nice is to have my trails shrink along their lifespan. And you can do that. So let's go here to the question. I'm going to create a question here in the emitter. I'm going to add a question. This question is going to ask for the age of the particles. And I'm going to say if my particle is more than 25 frames of age. You will see why. I know the lifespan is 50 frames, so 25, which is half of it. I'm going to add an action. So add an action. This action is going to appear here. We have the question and then the action. And the action is going to be control modifier action. Then you have this humongous list. And I want to use here the trail modifier. This is the one to use to control the length of the trail. So trail modifier. And I'm going to add my modifier. And by default, my modifier is going to shrink the trail by 1 each frame. So because it's going to happen at 25 frame, the length of the trail is going to be 25 frames. And then 26 is going to be 24. 27 is going to be 23 frames and so on. So when it gets to 50 frames, there will be no trail anymore, meaning that the particle is going to die. And everything, so it's going to work. Just before, I need to do something I haven't done on the xpTrail here. We need to untick here the full scene trail. Otherwise, it's not going to work because my trail is going to be stuck at this. And here, 25 frame, perfect. That's the longest my trail is going to get. So now, if I go back, we can see here my trail is going to disappear, and there is no more flickering. It's much more interesting because there is more stuff happening. We can see the motion, and my particles are actually going to die and not going to smother the simulation. So now I can go back to my emission, and we're going to get back to a huge birth rate, like 2000. You can see now it's more lively. It's there is more stuff happening. It's not flickering. So I can increase the simulation. Let's go to 10,000. And I'm kind of feeling the simulation, the head here. So of course it's going to get a bit slow, but we have this density I had in the original file. So maybe let's try, I'm going to double the number. So you see there is more and more trails. It's getting a bit slow. I'm going to stop it here. So here, what's interesting, if I could leave it, I could state, leave it live like that, and it would recreate by itself, creating some very interesting motion inside. Also, using this, I could, in the turbulence, add a bit of frequency here so that the pattern is going to slightly change over time. If I just put a bit of frequency like that, you can see the pattern are going to shift a bit over time. They're not going to repeat onto themselves because they are always I don't know how to say that. They're going to live again to be replaced by newer particles. Okay, so now I have a density that I can work with. I'm going to my xpTrail and let's go to the shader graph, and now I'm going to use a material. Here I used the direct output here to the surface, so there will be no shading. Now it's going to be 1. So I'm going to put it on the material, on the diffuse color, and this one here. Let's light a little bit all of this. Let's go here. I'm going to create some redshift light. So let's create area light, which is going to be in the center of the scene. I'm going to add target, tag, and null. So this is going to be just on the center. So now if I take my area light and put it there, I'm going to recreate a 3-point lighting. So we have one here. I'm going to make it smaller. This is going to be the key. And actually, let's move it here. Also, because I don't know where I'm facing, so I'm going to create from the perspective view. Let's create Redshift, camera standard. Perfect. And my camera is going to be 80 millimeter. Okay, that's a nicer frame. Okay, so this is my key light. And we're going to hit render. So it's extracting the geometry because those are cones, so it's going to take a while longer than before, but still pretty fast. Okay, so we have this. Okay, that's good for the key light. I'm going to duplicate this one. Let's make it, actually I'm going to leave it like that. And this one is going to be smaller. I want to have a small headlight. This is going to be the fill light. So I'm turning off the key light so I can see better what the fill light is doing. And let's decrease the intensity. Also, in the shape, I'm going to focus on the ray. So let's decrease the spread. Something like that. So it's going to be more concentrated here. Let's decrease the intensity as well. Okay, if I go back to my key light, okay, so I'm creating some shading, more interesting shading. All right, on my body here, I'm going to put back, well, actually I can recreate the material. So I want to use a black material for the head to occlude the trails. So let's put it here. And we're just going here on this material to use a very dark color. Actually, we can see it better if I just deactivate the trail. Let's go back here. So we have a very dark material. I'm going to, in the reflection, to augment the roughness to have something like that. Okay, now let's go back to the trail. It's extracting again. All right, so we're getting there. I think it's time now to switch to the Redshift render view. Oh yes, it's just hidden. There it is. All right, so on the particles, on the material of the particles, I need also to increase the roughness. All the points you can see here, fireflies, they are called. I don't know if you can see them with the compression of the streaming, but I can see there is some very bright points. That's because my roughness is to 0. I have reflective materials with the 0 roughness, so it's going to get back with very strong highlights. So let's increase the roughness. And I think we can also here on the trail maybe decrease a bit the thickness because we have a lot of objects on top of each other.
Now I've got a question.
Yes.
In your experience, when you were doing that amazing looking hero image at for the beginning there, what did you find the render times were like for kind of like rendering xParticles with Redshift?
It's really quick. That's what I like with the trails. It's very fast. You can see here we have something okay in 10 seconds, and the original one, I think we have the render. Yeah, you see, 8 seconds for this frame. So it's
Cool.
it's a small frame. It's like 800 by 800, but in 2K it would take like maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Trails are very fast to render. Actually, the longest is to initialize the scene almost. If you have a lot of particles, it can take some time for the render engine, for Redshift, to translate that to geometry. But here you can see it pretty fast.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Anyway, that's what we love with Redshift. it's so fast, so fast to render. Okay,
Cool,
so
thanks.
we have here our look. It's not as nice as this one because, well, I don't have as much time as to do it, but you can see it's the idea where we're getting there. You just need to add more stuff in it and so on. Something I add almost all the time is some volume light. I will show that very quickly. For this, usually I use a Redshift light, but just a spotlight. So a spotlight is easier to control. And the spotlight here, I'm just going to, in the details, I'm going to put the diffuse and reflection to 0. I will use the volume later, you will see. So now if I take my light, I'm going to move it this way. Also here, let's go this way. Actually, I can just copy, so holding Control here, so we use the same target as for the other object. It's faster than getting like that. Okay, something like that. Now I'm going to add on the Redshift an environment. If I hit render, I'm not going to do it. It's going to destroy everything because all the light in the scene have the volume set to 1. It's going to overwhelm everything. So I'm going to deactivate all those lights to 0. So now only the spotlight is going to work, is going to be visible. So if I go back here, it's getting there. Yeah, you can see by default it's very, very strong. So I'm going now with the spotlight, I can decrease it with the volume here. And getting this nice, nice looking ray. Now you can just control it in the object with the cone angle, the fall-off angle, and also the fall-off curve if you want to have something very, very shallow. And here, something which is going to be more, more pronounced. And here we can just change the color. For example, let's go for purple maybe. So it's going to add depth to your render. It's going to add more more interesting look, more interesting depth. One last thing to do is always to use, well, always no, but I like to use it almost always, is to use some depth of field. So for this, you just need to go to the camera, and in the bokeh override enable, I'm going to use only the focus distance. So it's going to depend on the focus distance we have here in the object, the focus distance, which is here. And I can use here the eyedropper to just pick here. So now if I go back, you can see here, every time what takes the longer is to launch the scene because it has to create a lot of geometry. Once it's rendering, it's very fast. So here in the bokeh, I can increase the cock radius, which is the depth of field. And now we have the focus only here in the center. Well, because it's not exactly where I want, I can use also drive the focus from this window. So if I use this one, this button here, I can click here. And that's not really better. I don't know why. It doesn't seem to pick.
Consider you might want to change your render camera to the Redshift camera instead of just going through render. So
Oh yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes, that must be it. Good. Good
Been there, done that many times.
iris camera, because yeah, it remembers the one from. I don't know if it solved the issue. It still seems blurry for me. So
If you select your focus picker again and then like refocus, because it wasn't technically rendering or reading the Redshift camera in the render view. I feel like I just dealt with that the other day.
yeah, certainly. Here I'm using a null. I'm going just to use a null, so I'm sure about the focus. This is fail-proof. Here, this is the focus. So you can see here this circle I have created. And I'm sure this way it's going to work. So let's put here the focus here. Let's call it focus. Let's go back. And did it pick the right camera? Yeah, it works. It's weird it didn't work before. It should have. Anyway, so yeah, that's another trick. Just use, I mean, this is, it's always going to work if you just use an object, a null object to pick your focus. Sometimes it doesn't work, maybe because it's particles, I don't know. Didn't seem to register the geometry behind. So now what I can do is I can switch it here, is change the coque radius again to have even shallower depth of field. So now the focus is only here on the cheek of the guy. And here maybe I can decrease a bit the intensity of this light. Okay, so time flies again. I wanted to show you because not everybody has xparticles. This is all nice, but I mean, I'm sure almost most of the attendees here don't have xparticles. That should be, it would be cool if I have time to show with how to do that with Cinema 4D.
Yeah, we did actually have a couple of questions as well, though, if you don't mind. So earlier, someone was wondering, would you be able to create a more, let me find it, a more like topographical view? So could you add like some height or some depth variation to these? I know you've got it doing the follow surface, but is there a way of generating a variation of height on the trails?
For the particles?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would just use, it's not xparticles or whatever, I would just use the same body. I would duplicate the body, so the head, I would duplicate it, just use a displacer on it. So it's going to displace the geometry randomly, and I would use this one to create some variation. That would work, it's certain, it's sure.
Cool, great. And there was another one saying, is it possible to move the center of the curls? And so I believe it would be like the pattern that you have there.
Yes, this is quite difficult. I wanted to show you that, but I won't have time. You need to go to the curve here and play with those. The source distance, you can see here we have some source. You can drag and drop some null object. It's quite difficult to predict. Really, it's you need to read the documentation, but yes, you can do it this way. It's still random, so it's difficult to pick exactly the spot you want and so on. There is still a bit of randomness, whatever you do, but the trick is to use those two.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Cool. And these final two, they're more sort of aimed towards rendering questions. So Janet was wondering if she could see your render settings on GI for this particular shot.
Yeah, that would be very easy. So I didn't talk about it, but for this one and the other one, It's very easy because the render settings for Redshift here, global illumination, disable. I hardly use the global illumination. You don't need to use it for that kind of setup because we want to have a dark contrasted image, and we have enough lighting to create the whole mood. Global illumination is very interesting when you have a closed set. If you do some product rendering, if you do some architectural work and so on, pack shot. But for those abstract stuff, most of the time I just disable it. It's going to get to be faster, and often it's going to look nicer.
Cool. That's a really cool tip, actually. That's great to know.
That was an easy question.
There was one final one, and I'm not sure if it's possible. So is it possible to speed up the geometry initialization? So, you know, as it's trying to kind of extract and process that geometry when you hit render. Someone say it's quite time intensive for 10,000 particles, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it takes longer here because I'm using this capsule. With the hair strands, you can get to crazy amount, like several millions of hair strands, going to be very fast. But capsule is going to be slow. I don't think you can accelerate this. Most of the time when I have huge mesh like that, I use the proxy, Redshift proxy here, which is going to convert already everything in a format that Redshift understands. I'm not sure it's going to work here with some splines. I haven't tried it. That would be the solution. If it doesn't work, I'm afraid no, there is no way to accelerate the translation of the geometry. I will try it because I never tried. I'm really not sure if it worked.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, those are the questions. Thanks.
All right, so shall I try the, maybe in 15 minutes I can do it with how to do it with only Cinema 4D?
Yeah, sure. You know, we love to rove run anyway. I think people know that by now.
We always, I run over.
That'll be good.
I think that'll be great. Yeah, it'll be great to show.
I try to make it quick, but okay. So I'm going to copy again the body and go back here. So yeah, just a word of warning. It's well, it's not that hard, but it's bizarre. It's bizarre because you have a lot of strange stuff to do. Not very difficult, but you just have to follow a certain order. So here, if we want to do that with Cinema 4D, I'm going to start with my body again. So the head, I'm going to name it head. That will be better. Head, not head, or I don't know. So head, and we're going to use first here the matrix object. Okay, matrix object. If I'm going to use it here in object mode, I can use the head as a generator. Okay, so now we have our particles. I'm going to have like 1000 for a start. Okay, but those are not particles. You can change them to particles by using here the generate matrices only going to thinking particles. Okay, thinking particles are those crosshair you can hear here. And those are going to create particles, but I need to drive them now. So how to do that? Let's hide our matrix object. So for this, we need to use here in the simulate one very powerful force, which is the field force. Okay, it's very powerful. It can almost replace xparticles by itself, but it's a bit complicated to use. Okay, so I'm going to use it, and I need to put there some vector field. I need to create this vector field. The vector field is going to give us direction where the particles are going to travel. Okay, so for this, I'm going to take my head and put it inside the mesh volume builder. Okay, in the volume builder, you have a volume type, you have a vector field. Nobody ever used that, but it's very, very powerful. You will see. So let's go to vector. We do have this stuff. I'm going to, in the head here, we're going to optimize and close hole so that it's going to cap here our object because it was open here on the bottom. You can see it has some vectors. Now, what's interesting, the volume builder can use fields. So if I take a field here, this is again a proof that field works everywhere. So I'm going to use a random field and let's put it inside the volume builder. And if I put it on the top here, we're going to use the creation space to object below. And you can see it's going to make something with the vectors. And it's going to make much clearer if I go here to the mode to our cross. And you can see here we have something appearing. Okay, so now we're going to my random field. If I change the scale or increase it, you can see at some point some pattern, and those are going to the patterns the particles are going to follow. So now we have done that. We have our volume builder, which is a field. I'm going to decrease also voxel size. Yeah, it's much clearer this way. You can see here the pattern. We need now to say that our thinking particles are going to follow this field force. Okay, so this is the most weird part of this. You need to create in the programming tags XPresso. Okay, XPresso is going to open this window. Let's decrease it a bit, and you need to do something very very special. All for that, otherwise it won't work. So I'm going to use the P pass in thinking particles. Okay, you have system operators. This is the XPresso everyone knows. This is thinking particles, so the particles inside Sigma40. I'm going to use the P pass. Okay, here we have in the TP dynamic the P force object. I'm going to put it here. And this one is going to use the field force I have created before. So let's drag it here. Now I just need to connect those two. And that's it. But you need to do that. Yeah, there is no other way to make it work. Once I've done that, I can close it here. The field force here is going to use our volume builder. I'm going to put the volume builder here and use it as a volume object. Okay, so now it's going to drive the particles with the volume builder. I need to change the velocity type, not to add to velocity, but set absolute velocity, meaning that it's going to give speed and direction. And I think a strength of 5 is nice. Now, if I hit play, we can see our particles are moving, but not very fast. So I'm going to increase here, and we can see it's doing something. We can already recognize the same kind of pattern we had with xparticles. So the last step, I'm going to hide the volume builder. We're going to use the tracer. The tracer is going to trace the particles of the matrix. So let's go here, tracer. And now we have everything together and we get the same result. Okay, so I'm happy that it's recorded because I'm not sure everyone could follow that for the people that stayed, but this is very powerful because once you know how to create particles like that and you know to create vector field, you can do amazing stuff with that. It's very, very powerful. just a few notes. If you want to have a finer, well, it's nice like that, but if you have some choppy lines, you just need in the volume builder to decrease the voxel size. Something like 1 is going to be very, very precise. You can also here on the matrix, increase the number of particles. Also, I'm going to hide here in the filter the particles because I don't need to see them anymore. And now we have the exact same starting point as before, meaning that we're just going to use our XP on the tracer here. We're going to use our Redshift object, hair strands, and that's it. Starting from that, the rest is the same idea with that with xParticles. And just to finish up, to show you, we have even more control than with xParticles because here my random field is using a Perlin noise. If I just change it to something nice like the displaced Voronoi, you have to try all the wonderful noise we have. On displaced Voronoi, if I just hit play again, I'm going to have some very interesting pattern. And depending on the scale, so let's go back here. You can create all kind of interesting motion, very difficult to have otherwise. If I hit play again, and let's just decrease. And that's it. So yeah, I will give this file, the final file with all the nice shading and so on with the project files. Thank you for everyone to have followed me. Maybe there is some question again.
Just having a quick look. I don't think there are, but there's a lot of inspiring, awesome, thanks so much. A lot of thank yous. So it was I thought it was a great session, great topics. It's really nice to see what you can create inside of like native C4D as much as Redshift, because I think the result looks amazing using kind of that technique as well.
Yes, xParticles is amazing, but it's expensive. You can do a lot with thinking particles, but thinking particles are difficult to master. Really, it's not that easy as with xParticles. You don't have that many control either, but it's still it's very nice to play with.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, lots of lovely comments coming in. Thanks a lot, everyone. Yeah, so as Lionel was saying, he'll throw some of those project files for both for xParticles and for native Cinema 4D on that link that's been in the questions. And for anyone who does want to catch up, it will be on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel in the next couple of hours, I imagine. So you can always go back through that. If anyone's missed any or turned up late, then you can definitely check that out. Cool. So yeah, sorry that we overran a little bit, but that's what we love to do now. We love to do as much as we can in these things, and I think everyone's kind of used to that we do that now.
Well, every time I rehearse, it's shorter than when I rehearse. It's always 1 hour.
Always the way.
And here with you, it's always a bit longer because I want to show more stuff. I shouldn't, but anyway.
Oh yeah, we just had from, and please always overrun. So trust me, we more often than not we will.
Yeah, it's so easy to do.
Yeah, we can't help it. Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here live, and thanks to Dustin for answering some questions in the chat, and to Lionel for this amazing hour and 15 minutes of really great stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It was great to hang out, and yeah, there were a lot of great questions today.
Yeah, they were some really great ones, and yeah, we'll be back next Monday for part 2 when we're going to be diving into some stuff inside of Redshift and volumes. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. Have a lovely rest of your week, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah, we'll see you. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.